Good morning. Welcome into Feedback. It is called the Lawyer Day. Attorney Corey Morgan in the studio, live on WRUS 610 and live on Channel 3 and 503. You're dressed much better for TV than I am, Corey.
Well, I was fixing to say that. I was going to say, normally you don't see me in a suit when I come in here, but since I am on video, I probably need to.
Yeah. Well, I haven't learned that lesson yet.
Yeah.
Obviously.
I even had a bath.
Well, wonderful.
Take
wonderful.
one every Monday, whether I need it or not.
Oh, so you move from the Saturday night bath to the Monday morning.
That's right.
bath. Yeah, well,
for the week.
That's right. Yeah, plan for the week ahead, right?
That's right.
Corey's here. If you have a legal question, he'll answer them for you for free. You know the local number, 270-726-6100, or long distance toll-free 1-888-610 WRUS. That's 9787. You get your questions in early on. He'll have time to answer them. Give him a call. We'll be back right after these.
School's back in session, and everybody needs to remember to stop when they see a school bus letting youngsters on or off.
Good point, David. We at Raleigh White realize that there are plenty of distractions when you're behind the wheel, whether it's the cell phone, radio, or beautiful scenery on the side of the road. Don't get so wrapped up in the distractions that you forget the importance of safe driving.
Keep alert when you see the yellow school buses. Make sure you pay close attention and never pass one when you see the stop sign out.
Speaking of stopping, I recommend Raleigh White as another place to stop.
You know something, Jerry? Stopping for a school bus is good for the student's health. Stopping at Raleigh White is good for everybody's health.
Stop by and see us. Let us explain to you how we put your health at top of our list. And we're here to provide the fastest, most accurate filling of your prescription, providing you the home medical equipment you need, such as walkers, wheelchairs, hospital beds, crutches, lift chairs, commode chairs, home oxygen, home breathing equipment. We're really striving to be your total healthcare center.
Stop for school buses and stop to see us.
We're Raleigh White on the square in downtown Russellville.
When you lose a loved one, a number of details must be worked out in a relatively short amount of time. The pressure of these decisions is only made worse by the grief the family is feeling. This is Wayne Reeves. Since 1959, our community has trusted Young Funeral Home to help them through this difficult time. As a family-owned funeral home, we understand the value of family and know that's how our friends and neighbors deserve to be treated. Young Funeral Home with chapels in Russellville and Auburn.
And Attorney Corey Morgan is here, and he'll take your calls. I'll keep one eye on the phone and one eye on Corey, and one eye, well, I about run out, haven't I? So, all right. So call us up. What were you thinking about coming over, Corey? Anything to look?
Well, actually, I made a few notes. I'm gonna, just some things that I've had going on over the past month since I've been here. Number one, I had this come up like 3 times since the last time. You can't go to jail for failure to pay a check loan. I know that some of the check loan companies, and I'm looking at you, check loan companies, you out there threatening to put people in jail. I'm going to get the right case coming to my office, and I'm going to sue you for doing that, because that's illegal to do that. And I would advise anybody out there who is having people from the check loan places call them and tell them they're going to jail, make sure you record that. Record the conversation. Give me a good recording, and we can do something with that, because that is illegal.
What are legitimate recourses that these check loan people have?
It's a loan. It's not a theft by deception.
Okay.
You know, whenever somebody goes to jail for a bad check, it's not because the check is bad, because the check didn't go through. It's the fact that they deceived the person, thinking they got a worthless piece of paper, thinking they were going to get money. That's the difference. And under the check statute, it says, or reads, it doesn't say anything, it reads that if the check has to be passed for a good or service. So if I give you a bad check and it's for my rent, you cannot prosecute me for that, because I'm not deceiving you for a good or service. I'm paying a debt, an antecedent debt, which is a lease, is essentially what it is. Just like if I owe you money and I give you a bad check.
Okay, I was thinking if I borrow $500 from Joe Blow and I don't pay it back, what can Joe Blow do? He can't have me put in jail.
That's correct.
Right?
We don't have debtors prisons, and I say that kind of there are things that can put you in jail that you don't pay. You don't pay your child support. That can put you in jail. You don't pay your fines and costs for court. That that could land you in jail.
What about that? Say you got a fine for something you did, and it comes up and you haven't got it, and the judge feels you didn't make any effort. Do you work off a fine or in jail, or what do you do? How do you?
You can. First of all, the judge has to make the determination that you could have paid, but you chose not to pay. Okay, it's not if you're completely
if it's on
indigent.
Facebook and you've been in Acapulco or somewhere partying and
exactly. But if you're in the hospital, something like that, that's perfect. The judge cannot put you in jail. Unless the judge is not supposed to put you in jail. There's some judges that don't follow the law like they should. Here in this county, we have some judges that really follow the law closely. But in some other counties I've been to, not so much. But the judge is not supposed to put you in jail. If it's something that you could not help, that you couldn't pay.
Okay.
So the judge has to make that determination. And it's always better if you're going to court. And you're up there and saying, Judge, I couldn't pay, I know my fine's $300 that I owe, fines and costs, but I couldn't pay it. If you go
I'm
up there...
out of work, don't have any income.
Right. If you go up there with zero amount of money, you're much more likely to go to jail than if you go there with, say, $100. If you say, hey, I've got $100, that's all I've got right now. I'll have more and say when you have the additional amount. But if you come up with nothing, you're much more likely to go to jail. Same thing with child support. If you owe money on child support and you go to court on that and you say, hey, I couldn't afford it, the judge is going to he'll be thinking, well, he's eating. Well, I saw him pull out a smartphone a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
I said, things like that. Judges think like that.
They're
like
expensive tennis shoes.
Right.
On.
They'll look at how the person's dressed, and all that. And if the person comes up there and offering nothing, you hear that people say sometimes, oh, if you put me in jail, then you won't get anything. Well, if you're not getting anything anyway, then you might as well put them in jail, right?
Right.
And you want to prove them that putting you in jail is actually going to cost them. If you have some money, albeit it might not be the full amount, it may be a third of what you're supposed to pay. At least you've got a third of it, and the judge will be like, well, if I put him in jail, we'll lose out on at least a third of the child support payment. They want to lose something. Or I should say, you want to show the court that court will lose something by putting you in jail.
Well, now, if I will say a $500 fine I haven't paid, and they send me to jail, will a certain number of days get rid of that fine, or not, or you get out and you still owe the same amount?
You can serve it out, and I've noticed different counties do it in different ways, but they'll give you so much a day. Okay. I can't say exactly what the amount would be. It depends on, like I said, whatever jurisdiction, whatever district or circuit you're in. But yes, you can serve that out.
Okay.
And in fact, if you keep coming up to court, empty-handed, you really have no choice but to serve it out at that point. But courts typically don't like to do that because, it's costing the county money.
Right.
To have the person in jail, even if the person, is paying what they're supposed to be paying to the jail, which a lot of times they don't. It's still costing money, so they don't really would prefer not to have the person in jail unless they have to be.
Right, I got you. Okay.
So
all right, go ahead then. I diverted you a bit there, I guess.
Oh, that's fine. I'm going to go some of these notes here. Okay?
Let me tell you, folks, here's your chance to get the attorney's opinion, 270-726-6100, or long distance, toll free, 1-888-610 WRUS, and he will not send you a bill for it. It's totally free today. Okay, Go ahead.
Right, my bill goes to the WRUS. That's where my bill goes.
That's right. We pay it all. Right, sure.
Okay, next thing, when you go to a lawyer's office, take all your paperwork, okay?
Yeah.
Please do that. I have people come to me all the time, and you'll be like, well, I got served. Well, let me look at what you got served. Oh, it's at home.
Yeah.
And that doesn't do anybody a bit of good. If you're wanting to transfer property to somebody, bring the deed that where you got the property. If you're dealing with a visitation situation where you want to set up visitation, bring in the court paperwork that shows what the rights are as to the parties. Things like that. That helps out a lot. And anything that deals with court, that deals with you as a party, you can go to the courthouse and get a copy of it. So I would do that before you go to the lawyer's office. Whatever lawyer it is you're going to, they need to see that paperwork, so they need to know what they need to do to try to change that order on that. So that's very important. Another thing, you cannot present an affidavit in court. You have to present live witnesses in court. Okay? People a lot of times will make that mistake. They'll go, well, I've got these, 5 witness statements. Can you put them in court? Well, no, we can't, because you cannot cross-examine a document. You cannot do that. You have to cross-examine a person. Just because something's in writing, there might be some things in there that the other side, just look at it from your standpoint. What if the other side came in with a bunch of paperwork? And, you're like, hey, that paperwork's all messed up. I can show it's all messed up, but the people aren't here to be able to ask questions about it. I mean, it's unfair. It's not a fair situation. Imagine if all a police officer had to do was have an affidavit, and you couldn't challenge that police officer on the stand. It's the same thing. An affidavit will help you get into court. Okay, like for instance, there are certain things under the law, such as custody modification, that requires an affidavit. And if it's within 2 years of the last custody determination, it has to be 2 affidavits which show that there's serious endangerment of the child's welfare. There's certain things in the law that require you to get over a certain hurdle. But whenever you get to court, affidavits are not there anymore because it's hearsay. And the question is, well, what is hearsay? Hearsay, under the definition of the law, is an out-of-court statement used to prove the truth of the matter asserted. So it's an out-of-court statement. Those affidavits will be out of court. They're not in court. Statement used to prove the truth of the matter asserted. Now, if it's something that's not, you're not trying to prove information, then it's not hearsay. There's a lot of technical rules. There's a lot of exceptions to that. That's what attorneys do. They try to look to exceptions if you're trying to present something. But by and large, affidavits are hearsay, and you can't use them most of the time.
Okay.
Right. Now, and just stop me whenever there's somebody.
Right.
I'm gonna keep going.
And we are waiting for your friends. I cannot believe we've gone to 917. You haven't called yet. He's here this once a month to answer your legal questions. Call us up. Okay, go ahead.
Maybe they're so enthralled with what I'm talking about. That's what
I don't want to interrupt you. I'm sure that's probably it.
That's probably it. If you purchase a motor vehicle and you think, well, I can no longer make payments on this. This is really hard for my budget. And you take it back, it's treated exactly the same way as if it was repossessed. Okay? So I've noticed a lot of people think if they get a vehicle and they can't pay for it and they take it back, they think that's it. But that's not it. You agreed to pay. I sound like a creditor. I don't mean to. I'm more of a debtor's attorney than a creditor's attorney. But if you agree to pay something, you've agreed to pay it. If you agreed to pay $10,000, you agreed to pay $10,000. You didn't agree to pay $10,000 only if you like the vehicle and keep it. You agree to pay $10,000. So if they get that vehicle back, if you take it back or they repossess it because you're not paying, and it only sells for $2,500, that means you've got another balance, right? You've got another $7,500 you got to pay. Of course, you can file bankruptcy on it and things like that. Bankruptcy's not it's one of those situations where you don't want to file bankruptcy unless you have to, because it does harm your credit. Okay, but just keep that in mind. Sometimes there might be better ways to get rid of a vehicle if you can't pay for it. You might have somebody you can sell it for. Say I was going to sell that vehicle and somebody offered me $7,500 for it. Well, I could say, hey, creditor, I don't want this vehicle anymore. Somebody's offering $7,500, and that'll give you $7,500. Can we just do that and work out something on the $2,500? Most of the time, creditors, unless they're idiots, we'll do that.
They want to get some money,
they want to get
none of the money, right?
Exactly. They want to get as much as possible. I have seen creditors do that in that situation. That'll say no just because they dislike the debtor so much, and that's foolish. You don't want to do that sort of you don't want to cut your nose off, spite your face. You want, the most money possible on that. But you can do that. There's things you can do. Same thing with a home. If you think you're going to not be able to pay for a home, you can try to do the same thing. You can try to sell it, and if it falls short, a lot of times the bank will agree to accept it, because they know that if on a foreclosure sale, they'll get a lot less, and that deficiency balance, you may wind up bankrupt. And so anyway, that's one of those things that people have to understand. Let's see. Now, wills. I want to talk about that for a second. I had it written down here. I've had people here recently believe that once a will is done, that it's done and you cannot change it. I had one that thought that a will was done, that somehow they, if a will is executed by the decedent, by the person who executes the will, and that person is the beneficiary, they don't receive any rights until that person passes away. There's an old adage that says a will speaks upon death.
Right.
Okay? So that person can change it. Say, hypothetically, I have a son named Jake. Okay? I don't, but hypothetically.
All right.
Okay?
Hypothetical son.
Hypothetical situation. And I have a will, and it leaves everything to Jake. Does Jake have any rights whatsoever? Right now, the answer to that is no. None whatsoever. And Jake cannot force me to do anything with my will. He cannot take me to court. Say I change my will and I want everything to go, say I love animals, which I do, and I want everything to go to a charity relating to animals. If I change my will, can Jake sue me and say, no, I was the beneficiary and you changed it? The answer to that is no, because I can change it as often as I want. I could change it once a year, once a week, once a day, twice a day. It doesn't matter. I can change as much as I want. It's my will. Or I can rip it up and say, I don't even want a will.
Okay, Jake comes to court and says, my dad was unduly influenced by these animal people, and they got to him, and they buttered him up, and they misled him, and he had dementia, and what happens then?
I always love your questions, because they're very in-depth questions. Now, first of all, if in fact that happens, he would have to prove, after I pass away, he would have to prove it.
And more than just say it.
More than just say it. He would have to prove it. It's got to be by clear and convincing evidence. And if he could prove it and show that in fact that's what happened, then it would make any will subsequent to the will, I should say, if I did a will and I did the second will 1 and will 2, if will 2 was done unduly influenced, then it would go back to will 1. Okay. Now, if I just was unable to make any wills at all, then it would go by what's called intestate succession. It would be by whatever the law is of the state of who receives it. In this case, it'd be Jake, probably. So, because he's my child.
I notice so many cases with celebrity deaths. Casey Kasem and Glenn Campbell, when there have been more than one marriage and different sets of kids, it gets to be getting to be a bloodbath there. And of course, Casey's dead. Glenn's not dead yet, but I read all kinds of things about the friction, and it can just be a disaster. If it's not specifically clearly stated, it could just be a terrible mess, couldn't it?
Absolutely. And what we have nowadays is a lot more broken families.
Yeah.
And because of the broken families, I've noticed that it does tend to increase the litigation.
My stepmom won't let me see my dad, and she's keeping us, his original family, away, and it just gets creepy, really.
Absolutely, it is. It's and you see legal issues that come up that you've never seen before. You dealing with people's bodies and things of that nature.
Yeah, who has the right to say where Daddy's going to be buried? Now, does the spouse have the first choice of where the other spouse is going to be buried? Is that the way it is, or does
That's correct. The next of kin is the one who determines.
Now the spouse is legally the next of kin.
That's correct.
Right? Okay.
That's
in every
correct.
case.
Spouse. Yeah, the spouse would do that. I had an issue come up, and I of course I don't, I take the duty of confidentiality very seriously, so I don't ever mention any names or anything like that.
Yeah,
but I can kind of give you.
Don't tell names and facts together. Right.
Right. But I had an issue come up similar. Well, let me kind of try to explain it without taking 30 minutes to explain it. I had a case where these two people were living together in Nashville, and they were a gay couple, and one of the persons had killed himself, and the issue was, and the person who killed himself had a will and left everything to the other person. Okay, the issue was, where was that person to be buried? Okay, and it just so happened when the person killed himself, he had just moved up to Kentucky because he was sick and killed himself in Kentucky. So Kentucky was the where it had to deal with the situation, and the situation was that the person who was living with him wanted to have him buried in Nashville. But the mom wanted him buried in Kentucky. And I'm sorry, I told you that wrong. It wanted him cremated. He wanted to be cremated in Nashville. And the result is the mom controlled, because the mom was the next of kin. Even though you got a will that says something that you want to have done with your property, the will was silent as to what he wanted to do with his body.
Can you in your will declare where you want to be buried, and does that carry even if someone being the next of kin says, no, we don't want to do that?
Very good question, and the answer to that is yes, you can have it in your will, and no, it does not carry anything. The next of kin can decide, what to do with your body. Say I had in my will, I want to be cremated and spread out over the Cayman Islands.
Yeah.
How much would that cost to do that? I don't know. And the next of kin may go, no, we don't have the money to be doing that sort of stuff. I'm just going to bury him in a pine box in Logan County.
So let's just take a hypothetical example. It is maybe the second marriage for a couple, and they've agreed they want to be buried together in Maple Grove or wherever. Well, the husband dies and is buried there. The wife continues living, and then at some point she dies, and maybe a child of hers says, I don't want Mama buried by him, I want Mama buried over here. Does that carry the...
Yes, wherever the next of kin wants you to be buried, that's where you'll be buried.
Okay, all right.
So, yeah, it's, I know it sounds, it can be harsh in certain circumstances. You think, oh my gosh, they were going to be buried together, but that's, I guess, the living, the law kind of treats the living more important than the dead, in a lot of ways.
It would be nice there could be a nice meeting of the mind before.
Oh, absolutely. and you hope that whoever the next of kin is will do that. Will take care of you. But, you never know. You never know what situation.
Well, the lines are open, and we're ready for your calls. We've been ready for your calls since about 9:05. So call us if you have a question or a comment or an observation for Attorney Corey Morgan. The local number, 270-726-6100. Or long distance, toll-free, 1-888-610 WRUS. That's 9787. I'll keep an eye on the phone. Give us a call. We'll be right back.
Head to your Russellville Piggly Wiggly for deals packed with back-to-school savings. Family pack fresh ground beef is now $2.29 a pound, and assorted pork chops are down to $1.29 a pound. You'll love Idaho potatoes with a 10-pound bag at $2.99, or 2 pounds of premium Dole bananas for just $1. Totina's party pizzas or pizza rolls are now 5 for $5, and Kool-Aid jammers in the 10-count box are 3 for $5. Look for Hunt's pasta sauce for 99 cents a can, and Kellogg's cereals at $1.99. And when you buy any 2 craft items, you'll get one free. Like Kraft cheese shreds, chunks, cubes, crumbles, or cracker cuts, Velveeta cheesy skillets or casseroles, even A1 steak sauce, and everyone's favorite Maxwell House ground coffee are buy two, get one free. Get Elmer's glue, Crayola crayons, and composition notebooks, any two for $1. It's back-to-school savings galore all over the store at your friendly and convenient Piggly Wiggly in the Bethel Shopping Center, Russellville.
I've often said air conditioning's my favorite modern invention, and to be perfectly honest, central heat doesn't fall far behind. It's amazing how much trouble it causes when a unit fails. But don't dare fret. Make one call to Knight Electric Heating and Cooling, and they can do it all. When the time comes to replace your unit, they'll provide you a free quote, offering options that will conserve energy and, more importantly, save you money on your energy bill. Plus, they'll throw in 3 free checkups. Buy before November 20th, and you'll also be registered to win a $500 Visa gift card. Knight Electric Heating and Cooling is a TVA-approved HVAC contractor serving the entire WRUS listening area. And once your new unit is installed, you can rest easily knowing they provide 24/7 service when necessary. Don't take chances with your comfort. Call Knight Electric Heating and Cooling at 270-726-3818. That's 270-726-3818. One call and they do it all. License number MO4318.
Hey folks, Nick Rice with Freeland Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. If you hate to save money, tune me out now. But if you want to know how you can save thousands of dollars, listen up. Right now at Freeland, we've marked every single new car on the lot at or below factory invoice, and you get to keep all the rebates. This is your chance to drive a brand new Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram for less than ever before. These are some of the coolest and most awarded vehicles on the road today, and many models are available with 0% interest. Think about that for a second. Brand new cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs at or below invoice. You keep the rebates, and qualified buyers don't pay a penny in interest. Come see us today at Freeland Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, 1451 Bowling Green Road in Russellville. Weekdays 8:30 till 6:30 and 9 to 5 on Saturdays. Call us at 270-725-4100. Like us on Facebook or shop online anytime at freelandcdjr.com.
And good morning. This is Feedback. You're on the air with attorney Corey Morgan.
Yes, I wanted to know who is the closest relative. Would it be a brother or a sister or a grandchild?
That is an interesting question.
That is an interesting question. I don't think I know the answer to that. Typically, next of kin goes spouse, children, then parents. It kind of goes up and down, and then out to the side. So I think a grandchild would be before a brother or sister, but I don't know for sure. I better not answer that question because I'll probably answer it wrong.
Okay. Good morning. This is Feedback. You're on the air with attorney Morgan.
Yes, I got a two-part question.
Sure.
Which is better, a will or a trust? And if you're on disability and you got a 401k, can you draw that without messing up your disability pay? And I'll hang up and listen.
All right.
Thank you. That's a tough question. It's a lot tougher question than it seems at first blush, a will or a trust. Typically, in most instances, a will is best. And in fact, you can put a trust inside a will. And for those of y'all don't know what a trust is a separate legal entity that will hold property for the benefit of another. For instance, if a perfect example would be something called a special needs trust. The gentleman brought up disability. Sometimes when people have SSI, which is the supplemental security income, I think is what it stands for. The SSI is what the government will pay. It doesn't go by the credits or the amount of money you've paid in. It just, people who are disabled can sometimes get SSI. Now, one of the things about SSI is you have to have limited resources. And if you have limited resources and qualify for SSI, if you receive an inheritance, say, mom and dad pass away, and then all of a sudden you receive a $100,000 inheritance, what would happen then is the SSI would totally cut off. Because you don't meet the resource requirement. There's a special type of trust called a special needs trust. A special needs trust will be, instead of paying you the money, it goes into a trust, which is a third party. The legal entity and is administered by a third party. That third party would be the trustee, and I would be the beneficiary if I received the SSI. And the third party would decide what to pay me, and there's certain things they can pay me, and help me out with my disability. If you have a special needs trust, my SSI isn't cut off. I can keep my SSI, and whoever is administering the trust, the trustee of the special needs trust, can pay me money from time to time for my needs. Without it being a problem. So if any of y'all out there have a disabled child, and that disabled child is receiving SSI, and you think that in the future he or she may receive an inheritance, then you might want to consider a special needs trust for that. That's what a trust is. So the answer to the caller's question, in that situation, a trust is better than a will. In other situations, a will is better. When you have a trust, it costs money to administer the trust. It costs money to have the trust set up. The trust, is beneficial in some instances, and in other instances it's not. I'm being very vague. I don't mean to be, but that's just the way it is. Sometimes a fact scenario will come up to where, yes, clearly this person needs a trust. One of the benefits of a trust is it avoids having to go to probate. You don't have to go to probate court because all the assets are in this trust instruments document and administered by somebody, and it tells them what to do in the event you pass away. So you don't have to actually go to court. So sometimes it's beneficial, sometimes it's not. Now, with respect to the question about the 401k, I'm not sure about that. I'm sorry, because I don't do much Social Security law at all.
Okay.
So I don't know the answer to the 401k issue.
Good morning, Ms. Feedback. You're on the air with the attorney.
Yes, I got a question for Corey.
All
yes.
right.
Corey, that in during World War II, my dad bought war bonds for me and my sister. And she and they didn't know we had them till way up in the 60s or 70s. And they found them and turned them over to us. It was $125. My other sister turned it around and told Social Security about it, and they took every penny of it.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah, did you have a question on that, sir?
Huh?
Did you have a question about that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm happy to I'll try to answer it. Like I said, I'm not a Social Security expert by any means.
Was there some question about this? Wondering why Social Security took it? Is that the question, or what?
Hey, Corey.
Yes, sir.
Saturday's reunion day.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Back to Chapel.
I appreciate that.
We moved from the Social Security to the reunion, so we got that nailed. Okay.
Right.
Hey, thank you for calling. Appreciate that.
Thank
All
you.
right. Sure.
Thank you.
All right.
And that's a good point the caller made. If there are assets out there and you're receiving disability, and it's the disability that deals with resources. At some point you receive disability, they don't worry about what resources you have. But SSI, and I'm not really sure. I don't want to talk out of turn here, but the resources become important, even if it's something that's found that you didn't know you had.
Talking about trust once again, maybe there's one heir that feel that this person would be better off if there were a trust and didn't get a large amount of money at one time. How was that done, and how is that set up? And was the trust can be set up to last indefinitely, or a certain number of years, or until there's no more money, or somebody would have to administer it and watch over it? Is that right?
The answer to that is yes. All of those.
Yes.
You can set it up however you want. It is a contract, essentially, is what it is. And you set up the trust, which is a separate legal entity, and you tell it what you want it to do. If I want as long as it's for a legal purpose, I can't set up a cocaine trust or anything like that. If it's for a legal purpose and all that, you can do that. Maybe I have a child who's a spendthrift. Maybe I do not trust my child, Jake, that I'm talking about. Maybe he grows up and he's a spendthrift. So I want a spendthrift trust where I put everything in a trust and have somebody oversee it to make sure he doesn't blow his $100,000 in a week. Okay. I want it to last him for years, and I can do that and have specific things he can purchase with the trust. So in a situation like that works out great. I can either do it while he's living, or while I'm living, which is an inter vivos trust. They call it inter vivos trust. Or I can do it in my will, which is called a testamentary trust. Bottom line is, I'm setting it up, whether I do it while I'm alive or whether I do it while I'm dead. I'm setting it up to where I benefit my child by not letting him blow all the money. Maybe he's a drug addict. Sometimes that happens where you have somebody who's is an addict, and you want to make sure that whatever that money's spent on, it's not going towards drugs. So, there's a lot of reasons you might want to have trust.
Caller, hang on. Don't go away. Okay, now suppose, how is it determined who would be the person to administer the trust? Would that be, if it's in a will, would a person be designated? That person would have to agree, and does that person receive some compensation for doing that?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
The person does have to agree to do that. It cannot be forced to do that, and you would designate the person who you wanted to do that. And the second question is, yes, the person would receive compensation. Typically, there's a uniform trust code that we have in our law, and I'm thinking it's 5%. Is what they can receive, maybe 5% of the income and a certain percentage of the principal.
Now, suppose that person passes away suddenly. How does somebody else get appointed to do that? Would the court do it?
The court would do it. The court would look to, and once again, there's a uniform trust code that actually spells out what's done, because it fills in the gaps of what the rules are. I could have in my trust instrument that a successor trustee is so-and-so, and if I don't have that, then the court will have to determine that. The court does not want the trust to end. The court will want the trust to continue on, unless there's just a small amount of money in it. If it's a small amount of money and it costs more to administer than it's worth, the court can terminate the trust. But otherwise, if it's a trust that's got some money in it that's doing a lawful purpose, the court will appoint somebody to do that.
Good morning. This is Feedback. You're on the air with attorney Corey Morgan.
Yes, I got a question. If you're single and you buy a property and you've owned the property for 2 or 3 years and you get married, and then something happens to the marriage 2, 3, 5 years down the road, and it ends up in divorce, are they entitled to anything that you've acquired prior to the marriage? I'll hang up and listen to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The short answer is no. They're not entitled to that. Now, whenever somebody gets a divorce, the court will look at the property, all the property that person owns. I should say, not just that person, but the husband and wife own, okay? And there's a presumption. The presumption is that it is marital property. And that marital property has to be divided under the law in just proportions. Just proportions typically means the court will do 50-50, okay? Now, if anything is a gift or an inheritance, or it's property from a gift or inheritance. In other words, if I have received stock, and that's as an inheritance, and that stock increases in value, that's because of my inheritance. Okay, it's not because of anything that my spouse has done to make that increase. Now, if you purchase a parcel of land, say I spend $10,000 before I get married, and I buy a parcel of land, and I get a divorce, that land will be assigned back to me because it is separate property. It's something I had before the marriage. That's the third, like I said, gift, inheritance, and the third thing is something you had before the marriage. Okay, whatever you bring into the marriage, you get back out of the marriage. Now, if I had that $10,000. And I take a mortgage out. Say I take a mortgage out to buy a motorcycle. I see a motorcycle for $5,000. I borrow money for $5,000 and take a lien in my land. I should say a mortgage in my land for that. And we're paying it back over time in the marriage. In that case, part of it will be separate, part of it will likely be marital property. So, you can turn separate property into marital property. You can have some marital property that has some separate property characteristics. For instance, if I say I take, instead of buying land, I take $10,000 and put it in a house that we buy together, and we're paying on the house during the marriage, then part of that will be separate property, part of that will be, marital property. So nothing's ever really simple, is it? But bottom line is, whatever you bring into the marriage, you get back out of it.
Now, that is in Kentucky. Now, are states like California, where they call it community property states, is that a different thing altogether?
It is.
As you don't practice in California, so
right. I don't practice.
I always read about California divorces where the spouse is always guaranteed half of everything. So.
Right, and I think they have some similar rules, in that what you bring into the marriage, you get back out a lot. However, they're more liberal in a lot of ways in what the spouse can receive.
Okay. Good morning. This feedback, you're on the air with attorney Corey Morgan.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
I don't know if it's a scam or what, but I got a couple calls. It's been a while, but I didn't get a chance to write the number down because they told it so long. It's from the IRS.
Mm-hmm.
Said they wanted you to contact them immediately and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the IRS just wrote you a letter instead of trying to call you on the phone. Is that right or not?
As far as I know, they'll write you a letter and tell you to call them. I'm not aware of any time that the IRS has actually called someone. You have to be real careful of scams out there, and I know that's what you're getting at, is maybe it might be a scam of some kind.
Yeah.
If the IRS, or anybody, not just the IRS, but any sort of governmental agency calls you and says, I'm so-and-so, you need to send me money or whatever, tell them you will call them back and call them back. That way you know who you're actually calling. Because I agree with you, sir. I think that it's likely that was not the Internal Revenue Service.
But if you call them back, they may have a number, dedicated number, and somebody to answer. Hello, Internal Revenue Service. So
right.
If you call that number back, you may still be scammed.
You're exactly right. That's why and that's a good point. You need to make sure whatever number it is, like the main number of the internet.
Need to get the real
exactly.
number, right? Yeah.
Like I know the number for the IRS is 800 tax form. If you dial 800 tax form,
they now have scams that show up on the caller ID on your phone
mm-hmm.
to look like it's something legitimate, and it's not. They're just able to put that on there on your phone and fool you, and they may be calling you from Jamaica or something.
That's exactly right. Yeah, there's some really intelligent people out there who run scams. It's too bad they're low life.
Shame
can't
they
use
couldn't put their intelligence to use earning an honest living. They could probably make big money working honestly.
Right, that's what I'm getting at. But they do this low life type stuff and scam people out of their money they worked hard for.
Yeah, that's what I said. I know they just said. It seemed like a machine said, we've been trying to get in touch with you, call this certain number, and they told us so fast that I couldn't even, I didn't have no pencil to write it down.
I wouldn't do it. I think you'd have to get a letter from them.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've drawn a little disability check. I ain't done a whole lot of big checks no way.
Right. If you're drawing disability, the IRS isn't going to be, they're not going to be contacting you.
Yeah, because I check every year up through town and show them what I make, and they say, well, if that's all you made, don't worry about it. You ain't got to file.
Yeah. No, somebody was trying to scam you. I'm pretty sure on that. I believe. And I've got so now that if I don't recognize a phone number or something, I just don't even answer the phone.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. I figure that if it's important, they can leave a message.
Absolutely.
My grandson Edward years ago said, "You've called on Neagle's." If you, back before his voice changed and he grew up, you've called on Neagle's, and if you leave a message, and if they can't leave a message, I'm not going to. I mean, I get calls from places, somewhere in Florida, somewhere New York, and then what is so unusual, I will get a call with my name on on the caller ID, and I guess the idea is if you get a call and it's your name, you'll certainly be more than likely to pick. And I ignore that one too. I know they've got my name on the caller ID as if I'm calling me. So
that's one of the unfortunate byproducts of technology.
Yeah.
You know, you're able to do more in a lot of ways, but people are actually able to scam more. They're able to make you think something that's not there.
And don't link onto unknown websites or unknown emails either. That can just start disasters. Good morning. You're on the air with Attorney Corey Morgan.
Good morning.
Howdy, kid. How are you?
I'm fine.
You haven't been scammed lately, have you?
Well, probably.
Just haven't found out about it yet.
Yeah, I just hadn't got around to figuring it out yet.
Yeah, okay.
But no, sometimes about if you don't recognize the number, sometimes a cell phone won't show up as who it is because it's maybe under a daughter's name or a son's name or a parent's name or something.
Well,
you know.
Sometimes I will recognize that and know it's a family member of a person, but I get just cities on there, just addresses.
Well, I mean, I've got friends that are on their daughter's phone, you know, and she lives in New York. So, I mean, I get one from New York, I think, is that her number or is that not her number?
Right.
So, you know, I'm afraid not to answer it. So, but now if it's on, I have put them in my phone and it shows up as her name, you know. But if you do that whenever you're, you know, getting one from a cell phone or something.
Certainly they could leave a message and say, hey, this is Joanne, give me a call back or something.
But if it's a scam, they won't leave a message.
No,
and, you know, if it does, it's you know, one of those just program calls to you know, and it's like, well, great, you know, and your answer machine picked it up, so they've got your number anyway that way.
Yeah, I know. That's right.
But anyway, we're just in for the whole of it. You know, it doesn't make any difference. But y'all have a good day and enjoy your program.
Oh, thank you for calling. We'll be right back. Bye-bye. We'll be back right after these.
This is Jerry White of Riley White in Russellville. And with me is Donnie Riley, another Riley White pharmacist. Donnie, I appreciate modern technology as much as anybody, but what have they been doing to the telephones? I mean, it's harder to hear what anybody's saying on the phone than it's ever been.
Jerry, let me ask you this. Is it just a telephone, or have they messed with the television and radio, so it's harder to hear what's being said on them?
Now that you mentioned, Donnie, it is harder.
Jerry, after examining the evidence, I don't believe the problem involves modern technology. It might involve the number of candles on your birthday cake. But at Riley White, we've always tried to do the best job of serving our customers, whether it's explaining the prescriptions to make sure there's no adverse reaction with other drugs, providing free delivery service in our delivery area, always having a pharmacist on call on Sundays and holidays. In every way, we try to provide the gold standard in service to Riley White customers, and we use modern technology to make our service even better.
And if you hadn't mumbled, I would have understood everything you said.
We're Riley White on the square, downtown Russellville.
Choosing a funeral home requires enormous trust. This is Joey Young. At Young Funeral Home, we've been earning the trust of Logan Countyans since 1959. Because we are a family-owned funeral home, we understand the importance of treating you like family. We invite you to call us at your time of need or come in and discuss the benefits of pre-planning a funeral with our staff. We create personalized services that honor your loved one. Young Funeral Home with chapels in Russellville and Auburn.
And good morning. This is Feedback. You're on the air with Attorney Corey Morgan.
Good morning, Don and Corey.
Hello. Good morning. There. How are you, Brother Richard?
I'm doing okay. One of my children on the internet, and they were checking out some things, and is there a state agency that holds money that has been turned over from some company or something that can't get your address? Of course, we lived in South America for many years, and they seem to think that the state is holding some money. It may not be but a few dollars. It may be a few $100s. Who knows? And relative to some stock that I owned in a company 30 years ago or something like that.
You know something, Brother Richard? Sometimes we will get a release from the state treasurer and has this long list of people who have money coming to them that's been in some account or some that they've forgotten about, or it's interest on something or something. And ever so often, I haven't in the last few years, but I would read the names of these people to contact the state treasurer. So some of that stuff might be real. I don't know how you know the difference.
Yeah, I don't know specifically that website, but there is I know the state does have a website that deals with that sort of, just like John is saying. But I don't know which one it is.
Who would you call to check on that?
I would say probably state treasurer.
Yeah, I would call the state treasurer is what I would do, and just you can do like a Google search, for that, and then get the number, and they'll tell you who you need to contact.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
That's a good call. I believe, because I know we have had releases, as I say, in the past, and you have this, and I would pick out names that might be from this area, and people, what'd you say about, I've got some money coming. I said, well, the state treasurer says there's bonds or something that's been stored away, and so, hey, had people, hey, I got $300 or I got $500.
At some point, it's going to what's called escheat to the state, to where the state gets it, but I don't know how long that's going to be.
Now, you're not saying the state cheats, you're saying escheat. Right.
Escheat.
That's a whole other topic.
That's
Good morning, you're on the air with Attorney Morgan.
Would you explain the purpose of a living will, please?
Living will.
Living will. Good call. Appreciate that. A living will is whenever you want to if you ever become in a situation to where I was trying to think of the name of that person down in Florida years ago, where you're in a vegetative type state, and you're unable to make a decision of whether or not to pull the plug. That's where a living will comes in. I was trying to think of the name of that case they had several years ago down in Florida. That
it'll come to me. It'll come to me after the show.
Yeah, it'll come to me later this afternoon. But I was going to say this. That was a perfect example of why you need a living will. If you have a living will and say what you want to happen, in the event you become incapacitated, in a vegetative state, then you can have the plug pulled if you need to have that, or not. You could say, I want give opportunity to try to get better. So that's mainly what a living will is. Everybody needs a will, and I think the argument can be made everybody needs a living will, but I think your need for a living will is a whole lot less than a will, because it only really happens in unusual circumstances. Of course, it make me. I have a living will too, and it makes me feel better knowing that I've got that. But one other thing, this is jumping back a little bit. Something similar to being scammed is when people call and they have high pressure sales and have you buy things that you don't need.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I have people call me all the time. Trying to sell me things, and when I say no, I'm not interested, they just keep talking, and do that. I'm probably, well, I know I'm meaner in a lot of regards to that sort of thing than the average person, but whenever they call me and I say I'm not interested, thank you, and I immediately hang up.
Yeah, don't try. Don't have to explain.
Listen. You have no moral obligation whatsoever to sit and hear that person out. They're taking up your time. Time is a valuable resource.
And charitable groups that may or may not be what they sound like. You have good sounding charitable groups, but they may be 75% or 80% goes to the administration and salaries and stuff. Let me read you. We've got 2 minutes, 2.5.
Okay.
Kentucky Sheriff's Office has posted a flyer on its Facebook page asking drug dealers to turn in their rivals. Multiple media outlets report the Franklin County Sheriff's Office posted the flyer Monday afternoon, features an image of a marijuana leaf, and says, is your drug dealing competition costing you money? We offer a free service to help you eliminate your drug competition. As of this morning, the Post had 394 online shares ratting out their competition. Let's take a quick call. Hey, good morning. We've got about 2 minutes. You're on the air with Corey Morgan.
Okay, talking about people calling you and trying to sell you something. It was I got a call one day and I didn't recognize the number because I got caller ID. So I just answered it, and they wanted to know if my husband was here, and I said no. Could I take a message? said, no, we'll call back. And I said, well, don't call this number anymore. And I laid my phone down, and it rung right back. And I looked, and it was the same number. So I let the answer machine pick up, and nobody said anything.
So that's about right.
Yeah.
They do this sort of thing.
Yeah, just ignore them best you can, and hope they'll leave you alone.
Exactly.
But it doesn't do any good to tell them to not call back.
I know. They're pushing hard. They're trying to.
Yeah, they are.
They are.
And if it's a cell phone too, I'm just telling people out there, if you got a cell phone, you're getting people calling you. There's a way on both an iPhone and Android to where you can have it to where you won't receive that number anymore to go directly to voicemail. So you might want to do that.
Thank you for calling. We got more calls now. We can't take them. Judge Gill called and said the Florida lady you were talking about was Terry Shipe.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Judge Gill.
Thank you, Judge Gill.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being tuned in. By the way, I need to get Judge Gill on the radio here. He said sometime back he would come. He needs to
come. Well, he can come up here with me one time. That would be great.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Enjoyed having you, and the calls are coming now a little bit late. Wish you'd called earlier, friends. ABC News here at the top of the hour on the 24-hour AM 610 WRUS Russellville, Kentucky. ABC News, then music, information, lots of other stuff coming up as well. Time now is 10 a.m.
From ABC News.